Okay, so just showing you how the group work occurs on the Google Docs. So my students go to a link that I put in their OneNote, and like I said, they all have a different font color, and then they have to put their examples in. And it's really good when you're doing it in the classroom as well, because you can put it up on the projector and you keep scrolling and following them, and you can really easily see, like you might turn around and say, group 4 with the red, you're not doing anything at the moment, and all of a sudden you start to see text appear. So it's a good way to monitor learning as occurring as well. Um, and hopefully the Surface Pros get to the point where they actually allow that in the collaboration space, because at the moment it's absolutely terrible. Okay, so now I'm just going to go through some other types of organisers that I've created, and these resources I can make them available through a Google link. I can make up a package of them for anyone to use, and I'm happy to, I have shared some of it already to the ETA website, and I'll be sharing this to Sweater, but yeah, people can email me for the link to these resources. So I have different types of organisers for studying the novel. So the first one here is just a chapter summary one, very basic, just listing the chapters, but that one you can assign different groups, different chapters. The next one, okay, didn't paste them in. So the other ones that I've got, and some of these are from other people that I've worked with. They've come up with some as well. You can see here, I'll go into my Google class. So we're doing the novel Coraline at the moment, so in weeks 8 and 9. So some of these, I asked the students to do the chapter summary separately, but the character activities, I asked them to do 2 each at home in different color font, and then pick a character. What else was there? There's the narrative conventions one. This one I got off a person I work with, Dorinda Walsh, came up with this one for Jasper Jones, and I've just adapted it every time I've taught a text. So setting, character and plot, imagery. And then so again, every student is told at home to do 3 of these in a different color font. So you can see here some students have done it at home. Others didn't do much at all towards the end of weeks 8 and 9 because of how hectic it was. But when we return, the whole idea was that they were going to be doing all of this online. So it's better than just giving worksheets that aren't checked. And when we do using WebEx, if you're with the education department, or even using Zoom, whichever platform you use, students get told to do this beforehand, and then I will come online and we will talk about it and check that the answers make sense, that they've actually done proper examples, that their effect statements are actually effective. So I might point out, like see here, I always point out that effect statements can't just be, this has an effect on the reader. I'm telling them all the time, it has to say something. So here the students are in the author's descriptions of the smells of the room create an image in your head. And I sort of say to them, well, what does that mean? Like, what are you telling me? Of course it creates an effect in your head. But the second part is quite good. It also reminds you of an antique shop with plenty of random and strange objects littering the room. So then I might say to them, well, what does this tell us about this house then? What is this telling us about this house and these people who have all these random objects? What does it tell us about them? So I would try and get their effect statements to be better through that online uh, collaborate learning, or I would do it in class with them. And the good thing when you're doing it in class and it's up on the whiteboard, you can see them making mistakes as they go, and you can help correct it as they go. Here's another graphic organizer on recurring symbols and motives. Again, I got this off Dorinda Walsh and adapted it for Coraline. So each student's group would start, one group would get buttons, one group would get the key, one group would get mirrors, the other world, cats, magic, so on and so forth. And then they rotate down. So you can see there's multiple lines for them to do. And that usually only takes one class lesson to do each graphic organizer in groups. These are the SEE statements. So I'll go back to my PowerPoint and we'll get to that in a minute when I come across SEE. So we've done graphic organizers for persuasion. Now here's some graphic organizers for film study, and I recently shared my genre study with the ETA on the ETA website, and I shared a Google link to a whole load of resources, and a lot of these are in there. So we did a genre film study recently because we found our Year 12s were not understanding genre and subgenre very well. So this one is based on, again, it's basically step in, step out, but on the left-hand side, I provide a question, and then they write the film technique down, and then they write the effect statements in there. And you can see, so the students were doing this towards the end of term. They were doing this online. By the time we got to week 10, no one was there, and they had to do an essay on this. So they were doing these at home. So this was Symbols in the Shape of Water. We watched 2 films. We watched Get Out and The Shape of Water, and our theme was horror films and looking at monsters over time. So you can see here that the symbol was being voiceless. Some of them started with some notes, and then they had to write about the symbol, write the time in the film, and then step in, describe what happens, and step out the meaning or the effect on the viewer. And sometimes when you read it, you see some silly responses, and other times they're great. So our main protagonist is mute and unable to reliably speak. This is similar to the creature, who is inhuman and incapable of any form of human speech. So throughout the whole film, all characters have the ability to speak, have communication problems, but our 2 non-verbal characters communicate flawlessly. It's a device that shows even though the creature is human, they're still able to communicate, not human, and this makes it seem like the monster is not as different from us as once thought. And she is a fish lady because it can speak Fishnese, so you see we've got some silly responses. Shows that people can still communicate non-verbally, and that their relationship is so strong they don't need to be able to they don't need verbal communication to communicate. And it goes on to Rot and Ruin, The American Dream, and again, there was a load of resources in this one for students to do. So when I'm watching a film, I let them watch it once all the way through, and then we watch it in chapter sections, and they answer this one. Then they would go on and do these symbols ones, and they might go on and do character ones, and they've also got the SWOT ones in a minute. So they also did film posters when we were studying the genre. So again, step in, step out, the techniques and conventions, and effect on the viewer. So I don't know what's happened with this 3rd column here. It shouldn't exist. So it's just been, obviously, when I pasted it into the table. So they literally step in, step out, or step inside the visible thinking routine, ask them to literally list everything they see. So they would annotate the poster and then list it. And then on the right, they answer this question, how do the text above create representation of society's fears? In this activity, I gave each group a different poster, and they would add their notes. And then when I rotated, each group would pass the poster around, and they'd move down to another poster. So that was their group work on Google on that. You can see here. So Night of the Living Dead, who is the victim, the everyday public, what's the film technique, they listed them there. What's the message? Signifies the presence of black magic. Humans feared the possibility that such voodoo magic existed. Fear shaped from humans' thoughts and fantasies, and they went on to talk about time periods and context and that. So I've also got graphic organisers for paragraph construction. So this is SEE. So I teach a paragraphing framework of just trying to find it. Organisers for paragraphs. So I learnt this off Jen Jesperson at Perth Modern. We had done the Mark Church routine, and then she used PEE, but I've always taught my paragraphing framework as SEEC. I used to have a simplified version and then realised it was limiting, so I added an extra E, which was the ability to explain your statement, and then I get them to repeat the examples and effects, similar to how I was getting them to repeat it in the comprehension task, because this is the analysis. This is where we're getting an idea that they know the conventions and that they can state what the effect is. So every time I teach any kind of text, my students have to do SEE. So it's the first thing I teach them at the beginning of the year, and they become so skilled at it. So I separate on the left-hand side the conventions I want them to look at, and I give each group a different convention. And So this one here, this SEE here, was from a short story. I think, yeah, it was. It was from the short story by Ray Bradbury, the whole town is sleeping. So group 1 got language, techniques and devices. Group 1 got the main character. Group 2 got the main character. Group 3 got other characters. Group 4 got setting. Group 5 got context. And Group 6 got theme and issues. And so these are really, really effective, these graphic organisers, because students then can take these ideas to help them construct their essays, and they can even copy and paste the stuff that they've done straight into their essay planners to help them organise their ideas. So this here is the SEE on the whole town sleeping that my Year 12s did. So you can see here the statement, the example, and their elaboration. And then I teach them that they just keep repeating these throughout complex paragraphs. So that's my favourite one there. That's sort of adapted from Step In, Step Out, but added an extra step. And I actually did some action research on the effects of it, and I found that my students' scores improved by like 5% after teaching them how to use these routines, and in particular this one. So I find a lot of Year 12 still get to high school and they still don't understand how to do a paragraph, and even by Year 12 they're not so good at it. And they don't really understand what we're saying when we say just do SEE. So this group work really shows them this is how SEE works. But you can change that to TEE or PE, whatever you want. This is a graphic organizer I use for SWOT film study. So I'll do all sorts of different activities throughout studying a film. But like I said, the very first thing I would do would be the basic questions and answers. Who's the victim? Who's the antagonist? What are the events? How's it filmed? Symbolism. And then we would go on and do a SWOT paragraph, a SWOT notes about the film, and we would stop the film in different sections and get students to write. And basically, when I stop the film, they can either do this individually or in groups. So group 1, you've got symbolic, group 2, so on and so forth. And eventually the tables all get filled up and get quite rich and detailed. So that was the Shape of Water one they did, and then they later on did Get Out as well. So we looked at man and about the fact that man is the monster. And in most horror films, like early horror films, they had these external fears, and then society realized that man himself is capable of evil. Okay, so I've also got graphic organizers for music, symbols, and characters in films. So this is one we did on Shape of Water and that one on Get Out, and they've added their ideas on the Google Drive. So I provided some of them that I thought were a bit harder, and some of them I give examples to show what this sort of looks like, and then they added to it themselves at home using the Google Drive. This was done during online learning stage. So this one's really effective, the symbols in the films, because they're so powerful in both those films. There's so many fantastic symbols used. The other one is characters in films. So that's another graphic organizer there. Music, symbols and characters. So scene in the film, significance to the theme or plot or story, how do they subvert or challenge expectations, and then repeated for the other film, Get Out. Okay, so I also use graphic organizers for essay planning. So there's different ways I can do it. I'll show you in a minute when I'm modeling and doing exam revision. I use them myself and show the students, or in this case, I get them to do it for essay planning. So these note-taking tables here, I give them some example questions that use the course ideas that we know that we're going to be assessing them on, and I give them 3 or 4 different options of questions that they might possibly do, and I give them a basic sort of essay plan laid out. This is not the whole thing, but so I say these are what your paragraphs might be on, but they're all going to tie back to the concept of context. And how does that context give us a perspective on themes and issues? And how do the characters in Mouse reflect that context? How do the characters in Get Out reflect that context? How does symbolism in Mouse reflect that context? And how does symbolism in Get Out reflect that context? So they write down here the idea, the example and effect, and that all they're doing here is copying and pasting their notes from earlier graphic novels that they've done into these planning tables. And then I might give them a full essay planning table, like 3 different ones on 3 different question types that they might get, and then they just basically transfer their work over from the other tables that they've done during the study. Here's a graphic organizer I use for advertising. Probably gone in bad order here. I probably should have finished essays. I'll skip that for a sec. Here's other graphic organizers I use for exam planning and essays. So this is what I use to demonstrate to them how to do a comparative response in which they're comparing Get Out and Shape of Water. So I said, step out, write a list of the similarities and differences in this table. So man is dangerous, power is corrupting, the other is envied, man is the real monster. And then this, as they could see here, this the examples are very much the same. There's not a lot of differences in the film. Both films deal with the fact that man is the monster. So develop a list of similarities and differences in conventions. So you can see this one was based on the characters, and with that compare the 2 characters. The next one was on the symbols used in the films, and because they've done all that earlier work, they're literally just copying and pasting this in, but this helps them. These are their paragraphs. This is what they will use in their comparative paragraphs. And then other film codes such as setting, lighting and camera angles, and comparing the similarities and differences there. Okay, so going back to my advertising one, so that's step in, step out, it's another one. So on the left-hand side, they list everything they see, literally. And it's really useful for still images and advertising because students tend to miss things, and so stepping in allows them to really focus just on what they see, listing every single thing they see and every technique they see, and coming up with lots of detail. And then when they step out, it's thinking about the ideas, it's thinking about the effect, it's thinking about the impact and how it's sold. So here's an example of it being used for this advert on pens and highlighters. And you can see students doing it. Okay, and that's about it. I've gone through all of the organizers that I have in my, well, probably not, I've probably got more, but I'm always just constantly making them to reflect the task I want them to do. And as I showed you earlier, I use the color coding to help teach them to group ideas, and I use annotating, and I model annotating and do release responsibility. Then I get them to organize it into tables, and then I get them to write paragraphs based on that. And it's proved very effective with my students. It's great for online learning because I'm not just going to give them worksheets for at home. They're actually going to be doing some real learning, and I can actually watch the Google Drive being filled in from home as they go. And I can monitor their learning and speak to them and, get them onto it. So in the Google, you can actually add your students to a Google Classroom. I haven't done that yet. Mine just have these anonymous little icons, but if they're at home, you can ask them what is your character, and they'll tell you, and then you can notice them working as they go. But it's very effective for group work using the graphic organizer, very effective for ideas, and it really steps out those, and they produce better responses. All right, thanks for listening. It was a long one, but yeah, I hope this all helps. And like I said, email me. I work for the education department. I also work for Curtin Uni, and I can send you links to my Google Drive. My email is chantel.saunders, CHANTEL SAUANDERS @education, and you know all the rest. If you work for the education department, you'll easily be able to find me using that name. Just make sure you spell my name correctly at first, which has no LE on the end. Okay, hopefully this helps, and I'm happy to share anything anyone likes, any resources ever. I believe that we are a community of learners, and we've been going through quite a tough year this year, and we all need to pitch in and help each other out so that we get through this and still teach our students in the best way we can, despite the stressful situation that we're going under. Okay, thank you. Bye.